So if you're familiar with old versions of Windows, you probably know that they don't really play very nicely with newer hardware. Perhaps an infamous example is that Windows 95 will not run on AMD CPUs that are at least 350 MHz and Intel CPUs that are at least 2.1 GHz. At least not without needing to patch the OS. But what about Windows NT 4.0? Windows NT is arguably a lot more stable than 9X, so how badly could it end if I were to install Windows NT 4.0 onto a somewhat new PC, at least newer than what NT 4.0 was designed for, and what even would work on this kind of setup? Those are some great questions, so let's get started. Now, context is kind of important in the setup that we're going to be using, and that's because we're using Socket 478 hardware, which isn't too unusual for Windows NT 4.0. After all, I have PCs that have official NT4 recovery media that are from the Socket 478 era, and so this is the thing that I'm going to be using. An Insignia D400A, and if you're unfamiliar with it, it's probably because it's got some of the least total screen time among any computer in my collection. I haven't really had a full idea of what to use this thing for after I got it in the summer of 2025, and I want to at least have some sort of reason to use it and have fun with it, because it is something I have considered making a video on. And now you can see why I feel like this may not end the best. First of all, this PC would have been sold in late 2004 or early 2005 or so in a Best Buy retail store. It is designed to run Windows XP, check emails, and browse the web, and maybe play some Solitaire or Bejeweled 2. Not run an operating system from 1996 that was already out of extended support when it was probably built. This PC does not have a floppy drive either. The model of Insignia PC that was sold with a floppy drive was a D300A, although that doesn't mean that you can't swap a floppy drive into this thing. It is also missing one of the rubber feet, which means that this may end a bit interestingly. Foreshadowing, perhaps. And in terms of the specifications, we really only need the processor and RAM specs, because the hard drive can't be fully utilized on Windows NT 4.0 due to file system limitations, and it is certain that drivers will be a mixed bag on this kind of OS. More on that later. As for the processor, it's a 2.8 GHz Intel Pentium 4. And with RAM, it's 512 megabytes, making for the perfect kind of setup to really test what NT4 can really handle. And I should make it clear that this is only going to be a temporary installation of Windows NT 4.0. I have yet to make a video on this PC, and there is official recovery media for it, not to mention that the hard drive may or may not slowly be going bad. Again, foreshadowing. Now, I did a brief proof of concept the night before, and it did seem to go quite well until it got to a screen where it then told me to insert the CD-ROM into the CD-ROM drive, even when the CD was already in the CD-ROM drive. So before I went to bed, because I was going to do this the following morning, I opted to disconnect the IDE cable from the DVD-ROM drive. And lo and behold, that worked. It let me progress further into setup. Now we get to the second hurdle. When I went to go partition the drive, this happened. You know what I said about the hard drive choice being kind of redundant for this OS? Windows NT 4.0's setup cannot format drives that are over 4 gigabytes. So I think that's a relatively simple solution. And after that, setup basically went flawlessly. It did all the typical stuff for this OS's installation process, and in under 15 minutes, I was on the desktop. Needless to say, I wanted more. Specifically, I wanted a display driver, and to put it simply, that is not the easiest thing to work with on older versions of Windows. Windows 3.x is a good example of this, but with Windows NT 4.0, I needed to go into the display control panel and select the adapter after inserting the CD and providing setup information, and then I could get the installation done. While the install disk for this driver has a setup program for Windows NT, it only installs a program, and that doesn't work properly, and it doesn't install the driver. As for other drivers, I'm simply not going to try to bother with stuff like audio or networking. Even though this thing uses a 2002 Intel desktop board and a respective chipset, audio isn't as detrimental to me in this case, and this is only a temporary install of Windows NT. After this was done, when I went to come back to go install stuff later, this noise was starting to pop up. I've grown up with a lot of context and knowledge of computers, and so it sort of activates a sort of PTSD in me when I hear a hard drive that sounds like a Geiger counter. And this isn't the first time I've had this happen, just the first time it's happened on camera in a video, during a video project. So I think we should get to what actually works on this OS, and I think we're gonna start with games, because oh boy, it's just kind of underwhelming. So I chose 3 games to look at for this video. Windows NT 4.0 did not have the best gaming support, and that's because it was designed for workstations and servers, not playing Halo Combat Evolved. Duke Nukem 3D wouldn't even let me install the game. The setup program simply locked up when I tried to select it and install it. Meanwhile, Need for Speed 2 SE will simply just generate an error, and then it will not install the game. While we're not going to be looking at it, Diablo II does in fact support Windows NT 4.0, as evident by the back cover here, and so does Quake. That being said, even though the mouse works correctly, this doesn't really feel like a very exciting or fun experience. Maybe partly down to the lack of audio, and maybe partly down to its design. I simply don't feel like this is the kind of system that I can enjoy Quake on. And of course, you've got Microsoft's stuff like the Entertainment Pack, and what I'm going to focus on here is that the built-in games do work, and to be blunt, even without audio, I could probably have fun just playing 3D Space Cadet Pinball for an hour or 2. Alas, gaming on Windows NT 4.0 is just an extremely underwhelming and not very fun experience. I could arguably have more fun just playing a PlayStation without a memory card. Partly because that's exactly what I have. But gaming has never really been a strong suit for my channel, and I more often than not have fun with computer hardware not for games, but just random program experiences and just having fun with those. So how about some programs? For this, I've selected a bunch of random stuff I just have laying around, and some other stuff, as well as Norton Antivirus 2.0, mainly to see what really sticks. This really isn't significant stuff for the most part, but as a side note, one program here had a bit of an interesting installation screen, aka if Sun Microsystems owned Windows. I'm going to go into relatively minimal detail here, because a lot of the stuff is not very significant, with some exceptions, and to put it simply, I honestly can't really be bothered too much, but Mozilla works. Not Mozilla Firefox, Mozilla. This is something that is in the things I am interested in looking at camp because it predates Firefox and is kind of similar to an open source Netscape. Alas, for some odd reason, the icon on the taskbar just seemed glitched out, but of stuff that I couldn't really get working in the time frame of this video includes ArcView GIS, which I do know works on NT 4.0. I just simply am kind of lazy here, but what doesn't work includes Liquid Motion Pro. I tried opening it multiple times and it just didn't open. Seems similar to Microsoft VisAct when I tried using it back in 2023. And now for some very brief stuff to go over. PKZip works. OmniPage Pro 10 works. QuickBooks 2002 works. Perhaps the most interesting thing that I've installed on here is StarOffice 5.2, and in this case, I put it in German because I don't know German. So why the f did I install it on here then? That's a great question. Now for the unenlightened, the StarOffice was the predecessor to OpenOffice, or OpenOffice.org. Essentially meaning that it's kind of the backbone of most free and open source office suites, presuming that they use LibreOffice or something as a base. In this form, it uses a very interesting shell and kind of treats itself as one giant unified program. Alas, I can't really use it here because I don't know German that well, and so maybe one day we'll revisit this. And now for last, because I was very paranoid about the hard drive, even though it turns out that the Dell Dimension L667R that I have is worse in terms of hard drive sounds. Norton Antivirus 2.0, or well specifically Norton Antivirus for Windows 95 and NT version 2.0. Yeah, this thing easily works. And from a antivirus scan that didn't take too long, there are no problems with this PC whatsoever. And so that's that. So to conclude, this is actually a relatively sane setup for Windows NT 4.0. All that would really need to be done to make this proper would be install a floppy drive in place of the card reader and use a smaller hard drive. That being said, I don't see much benefit to doing this. NT 4.0 really only beats 95 in stability, support lifecycle, and hardware support, and the latter can easily be resolved in 95's favor with CPU patches. And while neither really got the best gaming support, 95 easily had better gaming support than NT 4.0, which only got, at most, unofficial DirectX 5 support. Sure, there's plenty other games besides what I looked at in this video that will actually run, but it's simply not as much compared to 95 or 98. And I mean, after all, it is a fairly silly experiment, and this is only a temporary install of Windows NT 4.0. Anyway, would you consider doing this? Do you think that there was actually some sort of justification to using Windows NT 4.0 on a PC like this? After all, embedded stuff does exist. Did you use Windows NT 4.0 back in the day? If so, what's your thoughts on it? Did you enjoy this video, or is there something I forgot to address? If you have anything to say, feel free to let me know down below in the comment section, through my email, or through my Discord server, and feel free to give this video a like. But that's going to do it for this video, so thanks for watching, and have a nice day.